And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Morning, Nora. How you doing?
Very well, Brian. I'm just about to head off to Pilates on Tour in Phoenix to teach a couple workshops, and apparently it's going to be, quite warm there. So and it hasn't really lit. Yesterday was the first warm day here in California for some reason. I don't know why. It's like May. This is weird. But anyway, so I'm getting ready for that. And
Yeah.
you?
I'm preparing myself for, I'm going to be away for a couple weeks in China teaching. So this
Yeah.
is going to be uh, a bigger adventure, which is nice. We always like those long adventures, but at the same time, it's sort of, you look forward to them. And as they're coming, it's like, oh my gosh, did I forget something? I better make sure I remember everything. So it's, you have your checklist of things in your brain. And I keep telling myself I should put it on my phone, my checklist of things that I need
You
but
should.
do I? I don't. But yes, that's something I'm going to work on. I need to work on that because I always forget something.
Well, that's something you can do on that long flight.
That's a good point.
Actually,
That's a good
the
point.
only reason I said is because that's what I did after my last trip. I was like, okay, what did I forget? What did I like for that particular kind of trip? What did I need that I didn't have? And I just made a list. I wrote every single thing that I packed basically
Yep.
so that I could
Yep.
go back and edit it. Cause it's like, oh, that worked really well. That I never wore. That worked really well. That I never did anything with. So it's also editing. So those things that I
Yes.
think I'm going to need that I never need, and then I can go ahead with a smaller bag and more effective packing.
My goal is always carry on. And people say for 2 weeks, how's that possible? It's like the longer you do this, the more you do really well at editing. It's sort of, what do I absolutely need? That is all
Yes.
that I am bringing. And all the time, every time I come home, it's thinking, I always have 2 extra shirts. I always have 2 extra of this. I'm thinking, okay, so I don't need all of those. So, okay. And
Yes.
over the years, you just get very, very succinct, and this is exactly what I need and nothing more. And since I'm teaching just a couple of workshops, not too much, it's sort of like, I don't need a ton. So it's like, okay, good. I don't need to bring body parts. I don't need to bring anything that, customs is going to be, questioning, which is always fun. As you've
Especially in
discovered
foreign
over the years
countries.
too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is the thing. It's like, what am I doing? So, with that in mind, actually, it's really not with
Yep.
that in mind. We wanted to talk about today was effective. I don't know if effective program design is kind of a dumb way to say it, but basically, how do you work, especially with clients that are kind of complicated and clients that want to lead you all over shoulder, knee, hip, foot, back, right?
Mhm.
Lead you all around the block. How do you create a program, like a solid core program for that client that creates some consistency and actually allows you to make some progress? So that's kind of where we wanted to go today.
Yeah. When you texted me, here's something I'm thinking about. My first thought was guilty. Man, am I guilty of that? And we all
Me
are,
too. Me too.
because we all have those clients. I've had multiple this week where I don't know if you've had this. My longtime bookkeeper, and she's my concierge in the business. She's helped me for years. She was coming to me. I would have a program laid out and I would write it out, and this is going to be awesome. It's right heading toward her goal. And she'd come in. I did this to myself. I shoveled snow. I did this. And it's like,
Right.
crumple that up, throw
Yes.
it away. Okay, we're starting from scratch.
Yep.
And I think we get used to that to a certain degree, that, like I say, I'm not saying we're on a sinking ship, but we're on a ship that has a few holes in it. And instead of rowing faster to our goal and to our destination, we spend a lot of time trying to dump the water out that's coming
Mhm.
in, instead of just,
Yes.
let's keep going in that direction, because we'll get there eventually. We'll dump a little bit of the water out, but we still have to head in the right direction. And I think that's a challenge for us.
Yeah, and again, this is the absolute opposite of when I was running had reformer classes, for example,
Right, exactly.
teaching group stuff. Like, you got a plan, you pretty much stick to the plan. You may do a little modifying for that person over there, a little modifying for that person over there. Maybe you should be, take the springs down or whatever it is. But when you're working with a
Mhm.
client with a lot of injuries, which is who we deal with a lot, it's a completely different story.
Mhm.
And it really does require a bit of discipline on our part to keep the goals in mind. And you said something really great, and I want to absolutely credit you for this. What you said was the client has their goals. Maybe it's going back to golf. Maybe it's, getting out of pain, whatever their goal is, being able to do more of this or that. That's great. But then you have your goals for them. And your goals are basically movement goals, skill development goals, things that if they're going to get to the point where they can do that again, or not do this, or not feel this way, then you have your goals or your skills that they need to develop. And that's kind of like their goals. And how do your goals match up or try to get them closer to their goals? And that, I just love that. I thought it was really concise, and I've used it a lot. So, like for me, I'm thinking one client who just has a lot going on all times, and it's all pretty complicated. And she's always like, well, what about this? What about this? What is all kind of new things to deal with, right? And so I have like my 3 things, and I actually write the 3 things at the top of every notes page. So I keep them in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps me just to know, yes, I'm going to address the problem of the day, but I'm also going to do the program, like the central program, the core program. Maybe it's 30 or 40 minutes. Maybe it's not the whole hour. And then I'm going to focus on the problems for some times around that.
Yes. Yes. I was talking to a physical therapist about a client that we share. And what she was telling me is, look, what I want you to do is we're going to schedule this so that she comes to me either later that day after she works with you or the next day. That way, in her mind, in case you do something that quote unquote hurts or breaks her, because she's very fragile mentally and physically as well. But if you do anything, she can always remember, oh, but that's okay. I'm getting stronger and I'm going to so-and-so to fix me. And there's that word, to fix me.
Yes.
Now, after you mentioned this topic to me, I said, you know what? I feel, I'm a race fan, auto racing. In auto racing, there's something called your pit crew, which when your car is not running right, whatever, you pull in, pit crew comes out, changes tires, puts in fuel, makes any adjustments, you go back out, hopefully you're better. I kind of feel like clients use us as their pit crew, as their weekly pit crew.
Absolutely, yes.
They come in, it's like, I've got this, and this, fix me. And we get into that habit sometimes of, okay, that goes into the checklist. Okay, we still need to do our foundational work. We still need to do this, and this, but they need focus on this. Okay, so we are going to start with, and that becomes almost part of your programming every single session.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
problem solving,
really, you're problem solving all the time. And yes, we're body detectives. We see things. I was watching a client this morning move and I was like, I'm seeing a little something here. Okay. And I did a different exercise to just work with that. Okay. That's all right. That's still getting us toward our final goal. But a few weeks ago, she came in and her thoracic was locked up, and it took us 3 sessions just to get that bugger unlocked. And once we could get back to our goals because she has specific goals. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing to necessarily focus on those things. Sometimes you need to get to your goals, but don't forget the goals.
And I think that was a really good example of sometimes, I think of a couple of clients, they came in and there was something kind of radical happening, whatever it was. Like you said, thoracic was locked up, or in one case, like their hip was just an absolute mess, painful mess. And it's like we had to work on that because we hadn't actually worked on that before. There's something new that came up.
Exactly.
And we really did go off the track, right? The core program was out the window because you couldn't do it. You couldn't do half the exercises or most of the exercises. So that was out the window for 3 or 4 sessions till we got this managed, and then we could ease back towards the direction we're trying to go in. The other thing too, because I don't know if you're like this, I am not really capable, any of you who've worked with me know this, I am not actually capable of doing exactly the same thing for weeks on end. I'm just absolutely constitutionally not. It's like, that's just my brain and my whatever. But if I have the big goals, improve posture, increase thoracic mobility, whatever those things are, then I have many tools to address that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like I may change the exercises, the specific exercises or the way I do them or the focus or whatever, but I know what that big goal is. And I know that that's
Mm-hmm.
part of what I want to focus on and as many exercises are appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not like I'm doing these 5 exercises every single time, but I'm doing maybe variations of them, or I might do one on the chair and one on the reformer, one with the straps from here, one with a band from there, because I want to get that principle going, but I have many ways to address that problem.
And we have that in all of exercise.
Yeah,
I mean, a row is a
exactly.
row is a row. I don't care if you're using the reformer,
No. Yeah.
spring off of the trap table. I don't care if
Hmm.
you're, using a band, a
A pulley
tube,
system.
a pulley
Yeah.
system, a
Whatever.
dumbbell. It's
Yeah.
still a row. You're still
Yeah.
bringing your shoulder into extension and
Yeah.
squeezing the scapula back. I mean, these are just things that it's like, okay, there's a lot of ways we can do this. And
Yeah.
depending on what your other goals are, for instance, if
Yep.
I wanted to create a little bit more spinal stability, I'm just going to say for someone,
Right.
I may put them on the
Yep.
reformer and have
Uh-huh.
them kneel because now they're going to
Right.
have the wobbliness. So I'm not focusing on pure strength. I'm focusing on movement of that row, but they're in a
Yes.
position where there's a little bit of unsteadiness. They've got a little bit of more to control of their torso in order and organize internally in
Right.
order to achieve the exercise. For other people, it's about, I need strength. This person needs brute strength.
Yeah.
They need
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So guess
Yeah.
what? I'm going to focus on that by having them do it with a cable or with this or with that. So there's so many different ways to come at every single goal. It's just, okay, what else do you want to accomplish? And sometimes I say it's for variety's sake.
Yeah,
Just change it
exactly.
up.
Yep. Sometimes you have to approach the body differently. Now, 2 things. One, variety. I try to do my best, but I do like new things. I do like novel things. I
Mhm.
do like to change things up. And that can be a flaw of mine. And I recognize that. And I try to really fight that and know that, like, that's why I have this. These are the key goals. Like, stay focused on
Yeah.
those. Don't wander off into all the exciting things you can discover in this person. But trying to keep that organized, but also still have that variety, because the body sometimes needs to feel something 3 or 4 different ways to get the
Yes.
idea. You
Yes.
can do the exact same exercise in 3 different environments. Like, let's say, for example, I'm going to do, let's use rowing for an example, right? On the reformer in kneeling. That's one option. Then let's say, okay, well, that's good, but really they don't have the strength to do it. Okay, so then maybe I need to have them more stable, sitting down on something or even standing, just kind of plain, and just do some simple band rows, for example, or cable rows, right? Or somebody who is very dynamic. Let's say they're a tennis player or something like that. Maybe I'm standing on a Bosu and doing rows.
Mhm.
Right. So it's the same exercise, but I'm activating other parts of the system. And sometimes when you do that, other things show up, right? You get to see the
100%.
exercise in a new way. Weak spots show up. You see where they can manage it, where they can perform it well, and
Mhm.
where it breaks down. And that breaking down is often where you go, okay, that's where we need to work.
And
Maybe
when
it's
we
core
look at
control, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, when we look at any exercise, we also have to think about progression,
Yeah.
as well as
Yep.
regression, because both are
Yes.
important. Sometimes they can't do it. Like you said, they're not strong enough to do it this way. You got to change it, make it a little bit easier, and eventually progress back to that exercise. But if you do the same exercise over and over and over again, the exact same way, you're going to get weaker. Your body gets more efficient at doing it. And suddenly that 50 pounds to your body is, this is too easy. So I don't need to stay this strong because I can do it too easily. So you
Right.
constantly have to change things. And yes, you can just
Yes.
keep adjusting the weight. But again, your body gets used to doing that one specific thing. How many of us
Yeah.
have people who are, well, great example of this is Gym Farm versus Farm Strong.
Yep.
Okay. This was way back when I was going to the gym, working out twice a day. I mean, I was just very, very strong, probably doing a lot of damage to my body at the time, but I'm 20 years old. I'm bouncing back really
Doesn't matter.
easily.
Yeah.
But then my mom says, I bought these concrete planter boxes from a garage sale. We need to go pick these up.
Ooh.
Okay. I got a truck. I got a big, strong, manly man. I can go do this. My stepdad comes. He weighs half of what I do. He's a lot shorter than I am and slight of stature, but he's a contractor. He's been working with his body
Oh,
for
forever, forever.
years,
Mm,
forever. And yes, he works on high-end stuff, but he still does the demo and the installation. He's still working with his body on a daily basis. So I'm trying to maneuver this thing and lift it, and he's lifting them with no problems. And he's
mm,
looking at me and I'm thinking, I can deadlift 5 times what you can,
mhm.
but he can do it in real life. So he was
Yes.
able to transfer that skill into a real life situation. Well, again, if all you're doing is one type of exercise, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you're getting strong at the exercise, maybe not
It's
strong in life.
exercise is so specific,
It is.
right? I mean, this is well known. This is well documented in movement science. Like, you get good at doing that exercise that way, whatever
Yep.
you do, and and that's why in any habit somebody does will do that. And my classic example of that was when I started working with the core line. And we went through a lot of work with the inventor, Jonathan Hoffman, and we had, like, I think it was a 5 or 6 day kind of learning process because took us all through all the exercises, and I got used to them. And there were movement, but there were things that showed up because I was in a new environment, doing things I'd done in a different way for years, like 20 years. And it was like, oh, I thought I'd managed that particular kind of hip hike, blah, blah, blah. But I was in a new environment and poof, there it was again.
Mhm.
Because I had managed it in the environment I was working in, which was
Bingo.
Pilates. I had not managed it in any other environment. And it
Yep.
was like, so again, that new environment reveals things or re-exposes things that may have always been a problem, but you've learned to cope and you've learned to manage in the environment you're given.
Yes. Yes, and that happens constantly.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
variety is very important, and I consider changing things up a part of the progression process. A great
Yes,
example is,
absolutely.
okay, you're taking rows. We've been talking about this. Now I can continue to do cable rows. My body is nice and stable. Everything's going great. I can keep taking the weight up. Or maybe this person has had issues with their back before, maybe this or that. So I want to strengthen a certain way or strengthen a certain thing. Well, now I can do it with a dumbbell. We can do it bent over.
Right.
I can do it leaning against because literally I've taken people from the cable row and have them lean over an inclined bench and put
Yeah.
dumbbells in their hands.
Yep.
That's half the weight of what we were just doing. And at first they're like, this feels really it's familiar, but it's different. But they're fatiguing a lot faster. And
Yep.
sometimes I joke and say, yeah, sometimes you just got to lift heavy stuff up off the ground. And really,
Right, which is true.
and that's true. That's life. And then I'll have them do it bent over without
Mhm.
support. It's kind of almost like you're
Yeah.
looking at a deadlift, but I'll use a kettlebell
Yeah.
or something so that they have to stabilize their body in a standing position and pull with one arm and the other. And I've had so many clients say, well, why are we doing this one? I said, you ever had to pull weeds?
Yeah.
You ever have to do something in the garden, in the wherever, where you're bent over and you're pulling, you're pushing, and they, oh yeah. I said, exactly, because that's where we get hurt. It's an uncomfortable position. It's a position you're not in all the time. And I want to try and create as many different moments of strength building as possible so that they get that, so that they do get
Exactly.
stronger in that. And that's part of that
Exactly.
progression process.
Yeah. And part of identifying the goal, right?
Mhm.
And then working with it. And one thing I would suggest, if this topic feels like you, if you can relate to Brian and I going, oh yeah, I kind of just wander around in a program, is go back to your assessments. And we've done
Yes.
a lot of discussions on this podcast on assessments, or if there's other options that you have, go back to your assessments and really identify what are the things that you need to focus on with that client. And if you're finding that you're not making progress with a client, or you've got a client that literally kind of pulls you around from one body part
Mhm.
to the next in every session, sit back for a minute and just look at that and go, okay, I want to be clear for myself on what are and I don't really have more than three or four. I don't say like 20,
Mhm.
there's not a laundry list, like three or four
Mhm.
things, kind of high level things, three or four things, and just write that in their chart. And then really keep that in your mind, even when they're trying to distract you by, oh, my shoulder hurts today. Oh, my back's a problem today. Oh, my hip feels really tight today. That's fine. but try to stay on your track, because the other thing too that is really important to remember is changing movement takes time and repetition. People
Mm-hmm.
don't get stronger, they don't change movement patterns by doing it every now and then, by doing it for 5 minutes once a week. That doesn't actually change the pattern very effectively. You've really got to give them repetition and time for their body to really change. So those are some other
Yes.
things to think about.
And I love that you need to keep going back to the goals. I
Yeah.
think you coined a term in my mind, assessorcises, where
Yeah.
the exercise becomes the assessment. And a lot of times the exercise does sort of highlight some things that, oh, I'm seeing a breakdown here, I'm seeing a breakdown there. But sometimes we can get over focused on those things. Sometimes we
Yes,
can get a
that's true
little
too.
too fixated on
Yeah.
all of the
Too like,
nuance, the minutia. And we do have to sort of focus out, big picture, not so small picture, big picture here. Because again, for us, we want to make them better in every way, shape, and form, because that's what our brains tell us to do. That's what we do. But sometimes they may not need that minutia as much as they need to be able to stand up and sit down better because they lack the lower body strength, or they a 60-year-old woman or a 55-year-old woman suddenly has a grandchild and has not had to lift this grandchild, in a long time, or a brand new dog or whatever. And
yeah.
suddenly, oh, they have this new stimulus in their life, but they need to make sure that they have the strength for that. So having those goals written out, having them, and here's what's important, looking at them. I'm guilty of this too. I have some clients that I've worked with for so many years. I know them backward and forward. I know their goals and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? You get started into the session, and sometimes I literally have to say, "Oh, what am I focusing on?" That you have to just keep reminding yourself
Remember.
what your focus is for this client's big picture first. And then you can also work on the minutia. You can work on the smaller things, but choose one or two exercises. You're not going to fix it today. This is something that may take a long time. So just
And
keep that in mind.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's clients are always interesting that way. And again, I'm thinking of ones that are challenging because they constantly have something new going on. And one
Mhm.
thing that is really important, and this is especially true in my experience for a lot of your older clients, and by older, I don't know, it could be anybody, but really I'm kind of thinking even 55 and up.
Mhm.
There's a lot of clients who are just deconditioned, like
Yeah.
they're just weak. And particularly, at least where I've worked in the past, that was a lot of who would end up at Pilates. Like they'd come to Pilates partly because it was exercise that probably wasn't going to break them.
Yeah.
They couldn't do group exercise. They weren't going to go to the gym. They needed to go somewhere where they felt like they would be safe. And I have seen more than one teacher really get stuck on the minutia of somebody with a lot of issues going on and not address that big picture of they just need to get stronger. Like if
Yeah.
you get, for a lot of people, not everybody, but with certain situations, if you just get them stronger and more organized, a lot of things can resolve
Mhm.
on their own, if you want to call it that. And
Yes.
and a lot of times, like, do they have leg strength? On the reformer, I'm like, if they can't push 3 red springs, like if they're down to like a red and a blue spring on their leg work, they need strength. That is
Yep.
weak. And to get strength like that, they've got to do that repetitively. They've got to do
Mhm.
a lot of that. That's not something I can do 5 minutes a day and hope that it's all going to be better. They've really got to work on that. So that's another thing just to think about with those clients is sometimes you're looking at the specifics. Sometimes you're looking at what are the big pictures. It might be strength. It might be posture.
Mhm.
If you've got somebody who's really slumped and shoulders are really forward and they're super kyphotic, not from structure, but from collapse, like they just hang out
Yes.
there, you've got to work on that piece because that could
Mhm.
solve a lot of neck, shoulder, low back issues. So some of
Yes.
it is looking at that too, right? Is it strength? Is it posture? Is it integration? Is it mobility? Like those are big categories that I'm always looking at.
Yep. I remember when one of the first classes that I ever took to become a personal trainer. This was more years ago
A
than I
while
care to
ago.
remember. But guess what?
You were a
This
child.
stuck.
Child,
Yes,
Brian.
I was very much a child. I remember this very specifically. Question was, okay, you have someone who is deconditioned. They just need to exercise. Okay, do they need to do 20 exercises in a workout? Do they need to do, do something for their biceps, their triceps, their this, their that, da, 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 da. And what was brought up is 3 exercises: a leg press or a squat, a row, and a press.
Mm.
That
Yeah,
pretty much
that's nice.
gets
I kind of like that clarity. Yeah.
everything. And it's like, okay, do you need bicep? No, you're getting that in your row. Do you need posterior
Right.
shoulder? The rear delts, you're getting that in the row. Pushing forward, you're getting your chest, your delts. It was one of those things that's like, wow. It enlightened me because I was coming from more of a bodybuilding standpoint from years of having that sort of training, thinking, oh, you need to come in 3 days a week and we're going to do 4 exercises per body part. It's like, no, they're weak. They're deconditioned. That's going to break them, not build them. So start them simple. Do a little bit of core work. Do those 3 exercises, and that may be the first session. And
Yeah.
guess what?
Yep.
Do that regularly for 2 or 3 weeks, and you're going to see their weights are going to go up. They're going to feel stronger. They're going to get stronger. And then you can build on.
Yes.
And that really enlightened me a lot to, okay, strength building. What are the simple, easy core exercises that probably need to be done almost every session, depending on what they have going on with their body? But what do they need to do to build overall strength? And it's not rocket science for that. It really isn't. The
No,
minutia is,
no.
but not the big,
Yes.
big picture.
No. And in the Pilates environment, this is where your basic reformer program, your basic beginner reformer program does a whole lot of that, right?
Yeah.
You do footwork, you do supine arm work, you do, and then you do just like arm work, facing front, facing back. Maybe
Yeah.
you do some short box. And you kind of got it. You got pushing, you got pulling, you got some core work, you got a little mobility, and then feet and straps, you got some mobility work. Like those 5 or 6 exercises will get you a long way and will
Yeah.
really start to change the body simply. So, again, whatever environment you're in, there are really simple ways to make that progress and to get clients used to moving and in their bodies. Because half the time, that's the first step, and that takes a while. They've got to get familiar with the environment, what you're doing, how you teach, and what their body does, and that takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we always see the sharpest increase in strength in, the body building up. I'm not just purely strength, but movement quality, everything. In the first 6 weeks, a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, that's when we see the sharpest incline of growth, because the body's figuring it out. Their brain is working, their body is working, they're figuring out the movement. The movements are getting clearer. If they take that first session and ask them to do something as simple as a press or a pull, or even standing up from a seated position, and I try and overcorrect them and try and correct every single small minutia when their body doesn't even know what it's trying to do yet, it's going to overload their brain. They're never going to get it right. Rather than just saying, okay, we're going to do standing up and sitting down. That's it. You stand up, you sit back down. Okay, and I might make small adjustments. I'm not going to have them get in pain or cause any problems. But sometimes it's as simple as that, because when they say, why am I doing this? I say, how many times do you get up and down out of a chair? Oh, yeah. We need to strengthen this. Is it a squat? 100%. And then you can introduce a squat and it's familiar at least.
And I love that, because how many times have I been in a Pilates studio watching teachers teach, and their footwork is a classic. I remember watching one teacher, they were fussing with every single piece of this client's foot, ankle, hip, knee, low back. It took them 25 minutes to get through footwork.
Yeah.
And this was a new client, and I could tell by the end of that 25 minutes, that client was completely overloaded. There was so much information that person had been throwing at them. And they also were this is one of my pet peeves, people, so take it for what it is. They're also adjusting that body manually, taking the foot and moving it, taking their foot and moving it, instead of having the client do it themselves. And
Mhm.
I really talk about this, like, until they've done the exercise, like I call the first exercise the first waffle or the first
Yep.
pancake. If you've ever cooked, and some of you I know don't cook out there, but if you do, you know that first waffle never turns out very well. It's kind of like it's half done or it's burnt or it's underdone or whatever. And you eat it alone by yourself in the kitchen when you're cooking. Right. I always call the first few exercises of, especially of a new exercise that they haven't done before, the
Mhm.
first waffle. Like let them get through a couple waffles before you even think about correcting, because they got
Yeah.
to get familiar with what they're doing and seeing what happens and let their body make some sense. And then you can provide feedback.
I
Yeah.
think too many of us forget that not everybody that walks through our door is as body aware as we are.
Or cares or knows for
Or
sure. For
exactly.
sure.
One of my clients, I've been working with her for quite a while now. She said, "Oh, I went to a Pilates studio. I'm traveling. I went to a Pilates studio, and they said, "Wow, you're so body aware." She was so impressed at how body aware she was. I said, "Well, that's not how you started, but you
You've
got there.
learned. You
You've
got there.
learned."
Learned.
That's not most people coming to us are not
No.
body aware. Now, if you're working only
No.
with dancers, you might have that. Only with athletes, you might have that. General people are probably not nearly as body aware as we are with our own bodies. So if I learn a new exercise at a conference, convention, Pilates on tour, whatever, and I'm thinking, oh, I
Mm.
love that. I can't wait. And I was guilty of this because I brought back an exercise from the last training I did. And I thought, I'm going to do this on this person. And I fought with that exercise with him. I was thinking, what is going on? With me, boom, easy, got it. And I had to remind myself, this is totally new. He has never done anything even close to this exercise. All right, let's break it down. Let's make sure the resistance is light enough. Let's focus on form and all of this. And it took us probably 2 or 3 sessions before we could really load his body, but he had to learn the exercise before we could do anything with it.
Absolutely. And that's where this whole concept that has been really a foundation of my teaching since the beginning really is skill building. Right?
Mhm.
What is the skill I need this client to have? Maybe it's lumbar flexion, maybe it's scapular mobility, maybe it's posture, whatever it is. And if I can really focus on that skill, then I can like identify where they are at that skill, right? They're really good at it, they're really not very good at it, they're really bad at it, wherever they are. And then I identify like what's breaking down. Is it strength? Is it
Mhm.
alignment? Is it mobility? Like what's happening? And then I can kind of say, okay, let's start here and then let's progress. Because
Yep.
the other thing that, and you mentioned this a little bit, but I'll just put in a different context. There's one teacher that I worked with, Diana Harold, a million years ago at St. Francis, fantastic teacher. And she had, I use this funny example of a hill break. Okay. Random story. I had a Subaru. It had what's called a hill break. I used to
Mm.
work in San Francisco. I would drive to San Francisco. Those hills are insane. And this was a stick shift car on a hill. All right. So in this car, if I was on a hill going up a hill and there was a car right behind me, if I was shifting, it wouldn't slide backwards.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Which was fantastic because then I had a car that didn't have that. And it was like, oh my God, don't get too close behind me because I don't know how far I'm going to go before I get this thing in gear because those hills are really steep. So I called her, I said she had an excellent hill break. Her ability, and I would watch this all the time with great admiration, to take a client who was honestly in pretty severe shape a lot of times and just move them up a step and then move them up another step and then move
Mhm.
them up a step. Like her ability to very just gently and subtly progress a client without that client getting anxious, having a flare up was unbelievable. Like she really was just like the master of the hill break. Clients didn't go backwards. They just could slowly progress. And she knew just kind of where to push and how to push, what exercise to add. It was so beautiful. I loved watching that.
I think a lot of that comes down to one word in my mind, and that's patience.
Yes.
I think we have to have patience
Yes.
that we all want the person to get better faster. We want to
Yes.
give them
Always.
because we care about them. We want them to, first of all, okay, business standpoint, we want them to come back. Number one, yes. We want them because we care about this individual. We want to get them to their goal as quickly as possible. In certain regard, whatever their goal is, if it's getting out of pain, whether it's getting back to sport, whatever it is, we want to get them there. And sometimes we have to realize that, look, we're taking a totally deconditioned person and we can't go, foot to the floor. Here we go. We have to, okay, take your time and explain to them that the body takes time to adjust. You're going to see an increase in strength, yes, but things are going to take a little bit of time. Give it some time. And when they realize that and you set that expectation, that can really help. But
Yeah,
I think we're the
absolutely.
ones that don't have the patience, because it's like, you want to get them there so fast without just saying, we're going to take our time. We're going to get there.
Well, I have to say, and I think about this a lot. A lot of our sense of being useful in the world is success with our clients.
Yes. No
Right. So,
question.
so there's also that feeling like my job is to help this client move better and get out of pain. That's my job.
Mhm.
And if that's my job and I want to do a good job, if they're not getting better, that's frustrating
It's
or
on me. Yep.
unsatisfying. Right. I mean, we all go through that, I'm sure. And some
Yes.
of it is like, this isn't about me. I think about one client where, well, a few different clients where really I would like them to be able to go in this direction. I would like to be able to push them in this way. But like there's one client that was not ever going to happen. That client kind of needed to come in to do more or less the same workout every week. And
Mhm.
that was as much maintenance as they could do. And it was excellent for them, made a huge difference in their life. Not so much fun for me because it was really literally the same program for weeks and weeks.
Yep.
But it kept them going. And that was, so again, is this my satisfaction? Is this my ego going, I'm so great, I can do this? Or this is me taking care of that client and giving them what they need? And that's always,
Yeah.
there's always a little back and forth there, or can be.
And we all have that. We all have that sort of. I went to see my physician yesterday, my surgeon, for my post-op, and there were some complications from the past and whatnot. And he said, you're one of my toughest patients. So as a surgeon, you never want the second appointment. You never want the second time that someone comes in. You want to be able to solve it the first time.
Yeah,
You want to be able to just have them come in, do what they need to be done, never see them again. You've done your job. When
yeah,
someone is a thorn in their side and keeps coming back, it gets frustrating. And I mean, he was joking. He's a friend. So he was joking with me. He said, but I said, it gets frustrating. And then he said, you're on my mind way too much. You shouldn't be on my mind. I said, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. He said, no, it's fine. We need to get you to where you need to be. It's fine. But in this sense, we want to have that same relationship. We want to be able to solve their issue.
Yeah. No, I love
And
that.
hope
That's
it
a
never comes
really,
back.
really good analogy. Right. Yeah. And I mean, we have in many ways a totally different relationship because our clients do go on with us forever oftentimes. But just that
Mhm.
idea that we want to solve the problem, like that's our kind of our raison d'etre, if you will, is to solve the problem. Especially, you and I who work a lot with clients with injuries, like our job is
Yep.
to kind of try to figure what's happening and then see if we can move something, or if we can change
Yep.
something to make them more comfortable and make things work better. That's our thing. That's our skill.
Exactly. And what I've gotten into the habit of doing with my clients, a lot of times they come to me after physical therapy. And
Right.
physical therapy is very unsatisfying for a lot of them because they're not 100% when they leave. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not
Yeah.
blaming the therapist. I'm saying the medical
Yeah.
insurance industry, whatever it
Yeah.
is, there's a lot of
Yep.
reasons for it. And there's also good therapists and wonderful ones, and some that are probably not as good as others. But when they come to me and they haven't gotten as far as they thought they would, and they've been discharged, and they said, but I'm not better yet. I'm still in pain. I still have this. A lot of times I'll sit them down and I'll say, okay, well, we are going to take our time. I said, this is in physical therapy. They have so many sessions to get you out the door. So they are rushing.
Yeah. They've got such a rough situation, honestly.
They do. And I say, for
Yeah.
me, I don't have that. I have the luxury that I can take my time. I also have the luxury that I can look at the entire body. Some physical therapists do, but some get hung up on the one body part. I'm like, okay, we're going to work on that. But guess what? I'm going to work on everything. I'm going to make you overall stronger. Client that left earlier today, he's had like 4 or 5 different injuries, and now it's into his low back. And I said, you do know that your knee and your adductor are affecting that. So now that your knee doesn't hurt anymore and your adductor is now healing up, okay, it's in that SI joint and low back. I said, in my mind, this all makes sense. It's peeling the layers. I said, we're working on this, but it's going to take time, but it's all related. Whereas a physical therapist or a physician may just be looking at the knee component and then send them on their way. We do have the luxury of time sometimes where we can tell them it's going to take some time. We're going to get there, but we also have to keep reminding ourselves, what is that overall goal? What do I want to accomplish? But I will say this. There's one more thing. Those goals are allowed to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Just not necessarily rapidly and every time.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the key.
But because there's moments when it's like, okay, that's what we're focused on. Great. And then you kind of manage that piece moves ahead, right? Gets improved. That skill gets improved. And you're like, okay, well, what's next? And then the next layer of the onion shows up. And certainly with clients with multiple injuries and kind of a complex history, so often you're just peeling those layers, know, as you said with that client, you managed his knee and now his low back shows up because everything is changing. I'm thinking of a client that I've got who's got similar kind of hip, foot, ankle, knee, all kinds of like lower body issues. And we kind of manage one and then something else pops up and then something else pops up just because you are peeling the onion. Our little brains, our little thing inside the skull can only manage focusing on a few things at a time. It can't really focus on very many things at once. So if the major pain is, let's say, a sprained ankle, that's what it's focusing on. Once that ankle gets resolved, then it may say, oh, my knee doesn't feel so good either. And like my hip doesn't feel so good either. Right. Like it just, that's how the body goes a lot of times. So it takes some time.
I tell people that all the time. I say our brain can only focus on one thing being severely hurt, like a low back injury, a knee injury, something at a time. It's rare. I've had a few, but it's rare that it's multiple. Usually one is louder than everything else. So that's getting all the attention. It doesn't mean that the others don't exist and they're not bubbling under the surface saying, I'm going to be there soon. I'm going to raise my hand soon. But like we've used the term before, like whack-a-mole, sometimes you hit one down, another one pops up. You're thinking, what the heck? You hit that one, another one pops up. What the heck? Over time, though, we got to get past the playing whack-a-mole.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of our goal with this discussion is if you want to try to get past whack-a-mole, you've got to sort of stay grounded to yourself and stay clear about where you're trying to get that client. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get there. Okay. That's the other thing, because there are also, as Brian and I both know, there are clients who use distraction as a coping mechanism. And a lot of my clients who have multiple injuries and all kinds of things going on, almost like sometimes there's just a psychology of they don't really want to deal with it. They're like sick of it and it's painful and it's frustrating and whatever it is. So because of that, they really don't want to pay attention to that thing. So then they kind of go, okay, let's not pay attention to that thing. And they just ignore it for periods of time, or they just kind of let it kind of be out there in the world. And so when you bring it up, they don't really want to deal with that. So it's like, oh, look at my knee. Oh, no, it's not that, it's here. Oh, no, it's here. Oh, no, it's there.
Yep, that's true.
And that also is true. I've had clients who really I feel like, the bull with the ring in their nose, and they're just pulling me around to all their different body parts because they don't really want to deal with it. And so they're just distracting the situation. In that case, it's like, okay, well, what do I see as the most important thing? And I'm just going to focus on that. And I kind of, I don't say that I ignore them, but I have to just let some of that just fall off my back and go away. And I'm going to focus on the 3 things I think are most important here.
Yeah. I think programming comes down to a lot of it. And how I teach my staff is I say, okay, here's what a session should feel like. Now, I do this with my staff because I want, no matter who you work with, for the session to feel like there's some consistency. If you work with me, if you work with someone else, it feels similar enough. And so it's okay. Every session is going to have some core work. We do 95% of the people that come to us have some post rehab issue. So, okay, we're going to do that next. Get it out of the way. We're going to do that next. Then we're going to focus on lower body. Then we're going to focus on this. Then we're going to focus on that. But we have sort of a blueprint of what we want to focus on. Now, what I don't want to see happen, though, because I'm doing the post-rehab stuff at the very beginning, is for the entire session to be all of that. And it can easily become that.
Yes, absolutely.
So going in thinking, okay, we're going to do some foundation work. Then we're going to do, for their knee, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Then we're going to move on. Or for their back, we're going to go do this, 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 and this. Then we're going to do other things as well. Because guess what? I'd say 50% of the time, if not more, doing those other things, because they're in a different position, they're standing, they're loading their body, the load's coming from different angles, whatever the other problem is, begins to get stronger because of that as well. So instead of getting stuck in that minutia, we can actually work with that by doing all of this other stuff toward their main goal.
And one of the things that I know I'm guilty of that I really try to change is starting into the minutia first thing. I mean, sometimes you've got to do a little triage because an area is really tender or whatever, and you've just got to triage before you can do. So that certainly happens, and that's a separate situation. Or you know that this client needs to do a little rolling, a little this, a little that before you start, or things won't go well. So there's certainly that preparatory work that may be necessary. But there's also, then it's like, as you said, let's do the foundation program. And for a lot of clients, going through the foundation program, getting the body moving in a way that's appropriate for whatever situation they've got going on, getting the blood circulation going, getting them in their body, then going into that minutia, like towards like the middle end of things, is oftentimes more effective because the body's warmed up, it's aware, they're in their bodies, and they generally feel better. Right. Again, sometimes you got to do a little preparatory stuff to get them in the place where they can do the foundation work. When they do the foundation work, and they're saying, okay, so now let's really focus in on this and focus in on that. Because particularly if I'm thinking about the shoulder or the shoulder particularly, I want to warm things up and get them moving first before I dive into a lot of very specific shoulder work, because it's just going to be more effective. Like once they're warm and moving and generally in shape, it'll be more effective. It'll be helpful.
And I think where they are and how much discomfort they're in at the beginning has a lot to do with that, because like you said, triage sometimes is what is needed at the beginning. And a lot of people start with me that way, and we're doing that triage. But my goal is I want them up off the table, because we do a lot of our foundation work on a mat table. I want them up and off of there as soon as they are ready to. I don't want them to get stuck there and always be there if it's their back or if it's their shoulder, to just do. It's like, look, okay, we're going to, I say, prime the pump. We're going to go in there. We're going to put some blood into the muscle. We'll do these 3 exercises. All right, now let's go and do something else. It's still going to benefit you. Still going to work toward that goal, but we're going to work other body parts because I'm looking at the big picture. I mean, you and I have said this before. We come from an age where we used to have rabbit ears on our television. You know, and you first move those rabbit ears until you get a little bit of a picture. And then when you do, you start moving them a fine amount, to tweaking, and then finally, oh, the picture's great. Let's keep it right there. Well, guess what? So many of us look at the big picture first, then get into that small minutia and have a hard time getting out of it. And sometimes we need to step back, and we need to take a look at that bigger picture and say, okay, what does the client really need? What do they need for this body of theirs?
Absolutely. So, right, thinking about like taking the assessment, figuring out the goals, and then having the goals, your goals, movement, skill building goals lead the session. There's just this idea of like, how do I keep this client moving forward from a psychological perspective, from a physical perspective? And a lot of times, I'm going to bring up something slightly random here, slightly from the side. Sometimes I find with clients, I have to do something a little bit sneaky. I'm sure you've
Yes.
done a few things a little bit sneaky. One of my classic ones is clients who have a low back problem and their back is really sore. A lot of times when clients' backs are in pain, they don't want to rotate and they don't want to laterally flex. Like those
Hmm.
scare them, right? So with more than one client, I've said, okay, great, no problem, but I'll put them into all fours, and we'll do something like something we call tail wag, where you lift one foot up, and then you basically side bend to look at your foot, and side bend to look at your foot from a quadruped position. And they don't realize they're doing side bending because
Yep.
they're in a weird position,
Yep.
right? So sometimes with a client, I have to get them to the movement I want them to get to in a roundabout way where they actually
Hmm.
don't even, because like I don't say, oh, do you realize you were just doing lateral flexion? Because then they oftentimes go, oh my gosh, my back hurts, just because they've connected that. A lot of times, like we'll just do the exercise. Say, how's that feel? Say, oh, that my back feels pretty good. Good. Then we just kind of carry on and keep working with that. But that idea too of occasionally having to sneak in something, being indirect about how
Yep.
you address a body part is another part of that too.
Yeah. I was just doing that with a client today. His back has been really, really bad, the one with the knee and the adductor, and his back's been, and we did a lot of things for that. We worked with rotation. He was feeling a little bit better. And then I had him do what I call the dead shifts, where you're going unloaded to loaded back to unloaded. You're going into a semi-lunge position, picking something up, bringing it back to you, then putting it back down where it was. And I just said, just pick this up. It's easy. This weighs hardly anything. It's 4 kilograms. So you can do this. Your eyes closed. But I didn't tell him you're loading your spine. I didn't tell him
Right.
any of that. I also didn't tell him it's a
Yeah.
lunge because that might have freaked him out that his knee might bother him. So I said, you take a step forward and you go and you lift it up. And he was
Yep.
overthinking it. And I said, stop,
Yeah.
pick the dang thing up. And he just
Yeah.
went, oh, and
Whatever
he
that
picked it up. He
means.
said, oh, okay. And he started going through the motion. And then I fine tuned a little bit, but he didn't need much. And then I did it from the side, a sort of a side lunge and reaching across the body and lifting it up. And he was really fighting with it at first. And I said, don't think about it. Turn through your hip a
Just do
little,
it.
just move. And he did. And he goes, oh, yeah, that feels natural. And I said, this is a very functional activity because you're going to have to you want to take golf clubs out of your car. Guess what? You have to bend over. You're going to have to do it at a weird angle. You're between two cars. You're going to have to twist. And he goes, oh, yeah, I guess it is. But I didn't tell him this is specifically for your low back because everything was getting involved. He had lower body, he had upper, he had his core,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything was
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
engaged, but it was
Yeah.
sneaky. I didn't have to tell him until the end saying that's a very functional activity. He was like, oh,
Yep.
yeah, it was. I said, exactly. And he didn't fight me on it. He didn't afterwards say, oh, yeah, oh, I feel my back. He was like, no, that felt good. It's like, all right, let's move
Yeah.
on.
Whereas if you'd said this is for your back, he would have been focusing on his back and he
He
might
would
have
have
led to more
embracing.
pain as you go along, right? One of the
Absolutely.
things that I always think of with a lot of the pain science and movement science stuff is, and this is true in terms of how our pain system works, that our fascia particularly has both nociceptors and proprioceptors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both very strong in there. And a lot of times you can actually override the nociceptors, which are pain receptors, by the proprioceptors, which are movement sensors. And it just sometimes I find that's sort of a scientific way of saying a useful skill, a useful tool to have
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with clients in pain. Because sometimes if you get them moving, there's so much other input that the pain signaling can't be the foremost thing on their mind. Now that's
Exactly.
a fine line, and you got to kind of find that. But that's sometimes true. And in that case, that's what you're doing, right? You're taking his mind off of the
Yep.
pain by not talking about it, and you're getting the whole body involved. So there's a lot of input coming into the brain that means that the pain signals are not the most important thing.
Yes,
Right. So,
exactly.
so pain is very contextual too. And so that's an interesting, I like that example a lot. That's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, getting to the point where you can sort of get out of the minutia and get them back into general, what I'm going to call general fitness, whether it be Pilates, weight training,
Yep.
whatever it is very important. You can always address a little bit in each session, but my thing is don't let it be the overriding thing all the time. Because if you
Right.
do, you never get them out of it. And at the same
Yeah.
time, they're always going to be focused on it.
Yes, Exactly. How's your pain? How's your pain? Like to stop asking that,
Yes,
check in at the beginning of the session. You can say, let me know if anything is really uncomfortable and we'll adjust, but have them be responsible for that rather than you constantly reminding them, does your shoulder hurt now? Does it hurt now? Does it hurt now? That isn't
exactly.
actually helpful according to modern pain science.
I I used to ask years ago every time someone would come in, you know, how's your knee? How's your back? What anything hurting you today sort of thing. And one
Mhm.
day I realized, okay, every time I ask that, if someone asks me that, I may not be thinking about it, but if you ask me, oh yeah, I twisted my ankle. So yeah, my ankle's bothering me a little bit. But I wouldn't have said anything if they didn't ask me.
Exactly. Your attention wouldn't have gone there,
Not at all.
right?
So
I mean, because a
I
lot of
just
us
now
have little
sit
aches and pains. Yeah, that we just, we
exactly.
deal with, and it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't stop you from doing anything.
Exactly. So I've literally
Yeah.
just changed to saying, how you doing?
Yep, me too. Open door. How's it going?
Right.
How was your
And
week?
if
Da, da,
something
da.
is really loud up on that pain scale or discomfort, they'll say, doing fine. My back's been really bothering me a lot this week. Okay. So
Right.
maybe we'll focus a little more on that. But if they say, doing great, cool. All right,
Then we're just
let's
gonna
get
go.
moving.
Let's go. Let's go.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Well, I think we covered quite a bit today.
Hopefully this got you guys thinking about just being a little more intentional about your program
Yep.
design, especially with complicated clients, but even with non-complicated clients, and really keeping those skills in mind. Like, what are my goals for this client? What are the skills I'm really trying to build for them? And then, again, lots of ways to think about that and to play with that.
Absolutely. Look at the big picture. Look at
Yep.
what does this client need for life? What do they want to do? Because if they came in and told me, I want to get stronger, and all I'm focusing on is the minutia, they may never get stronger. So focus
Right.
on
Right.
the big picture as well. You can still focus on the other stuff, but maybe not only the other stuff.
Exactly. Make sure you let them move. Make sure you do. I mean, the thing that we get that PTs don't get, physical therapists don't get, is we get to work on the whole body and we get to really manage the whole body. And that's our benefit. That is absolutely a benefit that we have. So don't lose that benefit, right? Remember to work the whole body and as best you can and get everything going because that'll make a big difference in whatever situation they're in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us. We really, really appreciate and love every single one of you for following and coming in every week and listening to us. Do us a favor though, hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps us out. Comment, share, repost, all of those things. Instagram, we're at Moving Combos. Movingcombos@gmail.com is the best way to get in touch with us. And you can also check out the YouTube channel. We've got a lot of shorts and things on there. It's just under my name at Brian Ritchie. So until next week, for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you then.
Bye, guys.